Thanks everybody for joining in our first webinar of 2025. And I thought it would be pertinent to start out with talking about minerals and performance. So, DAC vitamins and minerals. It's in the logo, it's in the name of the company, vitamins and minerals. And so going back to the roots, what are all the minerals that are important to horses? What are their functions? And so that's what I thought we would go over. Now, for some of you, this may be overview. For others, it might be new. I'm always nervous about giving similar presentations or similar topics, but then folks tell me, every time I hear it, I hear something different. I'm at a different stage. I'm at a different point in my equestrian career, and so I hear something different. So we are going to go ahead and talk about minerals and performance. And the first thing I really want to start out with is um, all the time I get the question about what can you feed? Can you make my feeding program cheaper? Um, and really, there's no way to make your feeding program. There's no magic way to make a feeding program cheaper. There are ways to make a program more efficient, and that will save you money. But a lot of times people gravitate towards cheaper ingredients. And that, I know it's hard to have that conversation with a client when they say, well, I can go to Tractor Supply, for example, and I can buy this bag of Producer's Pride 12% sweet feed. And granted, all the prices that are in here, don't take them as gospel. I put this presentation together 3 years ago, so the prices might be completely different, but they give you an idea, right? But it's a cheap bag. It's 12 bucks a bag. People say, well, I can't go past that. And I have this um, graph in a ration balancing program that I use all the time. And in that ration balancing program, what I have the ability to do is plug in the type of horse that we're working with. So light exercise, moderate exercise, heavy exercise, growing horse, lactating broodmare, stallion, senior, whatever is the criteria, the body weight of that horse, and then it has the nutrient requirements for that horse. So we can put in the hay or the fiber that's being fed to the horse. We can put in the grain, we can put in the supplements and see if the diet is balanced. And when I say the diet is balanced, I mean, are all of the nutrients being met at 100% in that horse's diet? And so when you look at this graph, which if you've seen my presentations, you've seen a graph like this before, what you want is, see that 100% line? There's 100 on the left-hand side, and there's a red line or a darker line that goes across. All the bars need to touch that line, at least touch that line, which means then 100% of that nutrient is met. So in this diet, I'm feeding a horse grass hay. It's just 1,000-pound maintenance horse doing no exercise. It's getting grass hay at 15 to 20 pounds a day. Average grass hay, not the worst, not the best. And it's getting this cheap feed, this $12 a bag sweet feed at about 3 pounds a day. Because most people, to be honest, don't follow the feeding directions on the back of the bag. And they say, well, 3 pounds, that's a quart scoop or a 3-quart scoop. And that's what I feed per day. That's about what I feed. And that maintains his body weight. So if we're maintaining his body weight, we're really only feeding him based on one nutrient, and that is energy or calories, right? If he's gaining weight, he's getting more calories. If he's losing weight, he's not getting enough calories. And if he's staying the same weight, he's getting the correct amount of calories. The only nutrient that is being met in this diet is calcium, the third bar along. So we've got digestible energy, crude protein, calcium, phosphorus, copper, zinc, selenium, manganese, iodine, lysine, vitamin A, and vitamin E. Now, there are other nutrients that are very important to horses, but these are some of the hardest to meet in the diet, and they're some of the most important to meet in the diet. So that's why these ones are highlighted here on this graph. So in this diet of 20 pounds of grass hay, and 3 pounds of this cheap feed that I just couldn't pass up when I went to the store because it was so inexpensive. It's $12 a bag. The only nutrient that is being met is calcium, right? So when I actually tweaked this diet and I said, okay, well, how much of this feed do I have to put in to meet the nutrient requirements of the other things like the phosphorus or the energy or the protein or the selenium? I actually had to feed 10 pounds a day. So if I have to feed 10 pounds a day of this bag, number one, it's a 50-pound bag and that's only going to last me 5 days. No, that's now not a cheap feed, right? That is not inexpensive at all. It went from the 3 pounds a day being 72 cents a day at the $12 a bag a day to 10 pounds where I'm meeting all my nutrient requirements. It's now $2.40 a horse a day to feed this. So my point here is the cost of the bag of feed does not tell you whether it is going to be an inexpensive item to add into your feeding program. How much do I have to feed is really, and cost per head per day based on the correct feeding amount is really what we need to look at. And if we were only feeding 3 pounds a day, we would still have to add DAC vitamins and minerals or a ration balance or something else to get these numbers up. So this is not a cheap way to feed a horse. Okay. So we'll get into the minerals. Iron, for example. Now, iron is not necessarily a hard one to meet in the diet because iron comes from green leafy vegetables. What the horses eat the most of? Green leafy vegetables, right? They eat a lot of forage, green forage. So iron is actually pretty easy to get in the diet, but it's really important. It gives blood its oxygen carrying capacity. Iron deficiencies in horses are actually pretty rare. It's pretty efficiently absorbed in its organic form. Now, dirt iron, like iron that is straight up dirt, is not very bioavailable to the horse, but when it's in its plant form, it is quite bioavailable to the horse. So iron oxide that you get out of dirt, poorly absorbed. And it's also lost in sweat. Manganese is very important for bone formation, for the formation of chondroitin sulfate. Now you think about chondroitin sulfate, you're like, well, isn't that a joint? That's in a joint supplement, right? Okay, your chondroitin sulfate, your MSM, hyaluronic acid, glucosamine. These are all natural ingredients that your horse makes in its joints, right, to support joint health. When we choose to feed a joint supplement is because the rate of the horse making these nutrients, these ingredients, is slower than the rate that they are being used. Okay, so in an older horse that's got really bad joints, some osteoporosis or some joint breakdown, that's when we recommend adding an additional joint supplement so that we can support the chondroitin, the glucosamine, hyaluronic. Oh, wow. So manganese, important for bone formation, chondroitin sulfate, deficiency in growing horses, poor growth plate development. So on the ends, it's not quite the end, but close to the end of a growing bone is a growth plate. And that growth plate is made out of cartilage. And before that horse becomes a mature animal, that growth plate will be converted from cartilage to bone, right? And in order for that to happen, we really need to have enough copper, manganese, and zinc. So the three letters that start those words, CMZ. What product is that of DAX? The CMZ paste. It is made of copper, manganese, and zinc. And this is why we add manganese for those horses that are having difficulty converting that cartilage in the growth plate successfully over to bone, and maybe they have some osteochondrosis or some issues. That's why we have large quantities of manganese in there. Also for energy metabolism and protein metabolism, when I use the word metabolism, I mean creating, right? We are creating energy in the body from food ingredients. We are creating protein in the body and utilizing it from feed ingredients, fat metabolism. There's very little manganese in the sweat. Selenium, another really important one. It's a powerful antioxidant. Alongside vitamin C and vitamin E are powerful antioxidants. Vitamin E and selenium kind of go hand in hand. Every time you stress a horse, one of the biggest things we do to stress horses is exercise them. We cause oxidative stress or cell breakdown, cell death. Like selenium or vitamin E is going to help diffuse that oxidative stress. It's very important function, thyroid function and reproductive function, all because these functions are really heavily affected by cell death or stress or breakdown. And so by using an antioxidant, we're really boosting immune function, because if a disease comes along, or a sickness or a virus, or a bacteria, they're creating cell death. They're creating oxidative stress. And an antioxidant is going to get rid of that. Okay. Selenium is poorly absorbed in its inorganic form. So in the DAC products, you will see that we use 100%. And that organic selenium means that it is in its plant form. That's the best way to describe it. It is, you take that selenium in its rock type form and you grow you grow yeast on it. Yeast is a tiny, tiny, tiny plant. And the yeast, as it's growing on that bed of rock type selenium, it absorbs the selenium. And then you feed the horse that selenium infused yeast. And so it's in its plant form, it's in its organic form, and it's very, very bioavailable to the horse. Iodine. Iodine is important, but iodine is in plenty. It's never really rare in the horse. The problem with selenium and iodine, for that matter, are the signs of deficiency and excess are the same. So it's hard to know, and you've got to kind of dig deeper. If you see some of the symptoms, that you might say, oh, that's a selenium toxicity, or a selenium deficiency, or iodine deficiency, or iodine toxicity. You have to look at the diet and evaluate, are you getting too much iodine? Are you not getting enough? So I actually more often than not see too much iodine in the diet. Iodine is really important for thyroid hormone synthesis, for muscle, nervous system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system. But iodine imbalance, poor hair coat, hair loss. See the same thing with selenium. But the time that I've actually seen it in practice was in Japan, and the horses, the brood mares, thoroughbred brood mares, their fields are literally right on the beach, right on the ocean. So there's the grassy pasture, then the fence, and then the kind of beach starts. It's beautiful, idyllic. But they also have a lot of kelp and seaweed that comes up, that washes up onto those beaches, and that leaches into the soil. And anything that comes out of the ocean can be very high in iodine. And so they have very variable iodine contents. And these mares had very high iodine contents, and they were having just unexplained abortions with the mares, or stillborn foals. And so we actually nailed it down to too much iodine. Obviously, we don't all have the luxury of having beautiful fields where our horses are on the beach, but I am always a little cautious of having seaweed like kelp meal as an ingredient in supplements or feeds, just because you can have really varying levels of iodine. Zinc, another really important one for bone development, for protein development, carbohydrates, bone development. Also, though, for skin and hoof. Remember that hoof is just hard hair, so anything that's important for hoof quality is also important for hair quality and skin quality. And also, deficiencies in zinc can interfere with glucose and insulin regulation as well. Your immune system is 70% of your immune system starts in your gut, and zinc is really, really important for think about the lining of your intestine as skin. And so everything that benefits skin will also benefit that epithelial, that's the lining of the intestine. And so when we want to boost immune function, a lot of us always think to vitamin C, but actually zinc is really, really important. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant. So just like selenium and vitamin E, it's kind of decreasing that oxidative stress. But because 70% of your immune system starts in your gut, and when you get sick or diseased or stressed, your gut cells separate. The zinc helps to heal that. So zinc is actually really, really important for your immune function. Bone development, remember what's happening at those growth plates. Cartilage is being converted to bone. And if that is not happening correctly, then we have developmental orthopedic disease. So copper, manganese, and zinc are part of that CMZ paste. Copper, connective tissue, metabolism of iron, energy production, also the kind of dark pigmentation in the skin and hair. So if you look at some of the supplements that kind of claim to saturate or increase color, like increase the darkness of the horse's hair coat, will have a lot of high levels of copper in them. Calcium, very important for bone metabolism, muscle function. No one really thinks about nerve function, but absolutely for nerve function as well. I think that the biggest thing that most people are familiar with calcium is its relationship to phosphorus. Kind of the ideal ratio is 2 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus. You can go as low as 1 to 1, but you never want more phosphorus in the diet than calcium because it will actually continue to block the uptake of calcium. Horses are also very good at making sure their blood looks like it's always got plenty of calcium in it. So they'll suck calcium out of their bones to put it in their blood. All right. So it's also why blood tests for a lot of vitamins and minerals aren't actually that accurate because the horse will suck those minerals out of their blood or out of their organs to make it look like that the blood is got adequate quantities when really the whole horse does not. So yeah, in an older horse, you can go as high as 5 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus, but like I said, you never want more phosphorus in the diet than calcium. We are using an alternative form of calcium in some of our DAC products. It's marine derived calcium or calcite, and it's got a honeycomb structure. And so not only is it supplying the animal with the nutrient calcium, but it's also, because of its physical form, being used to buffer stomach acid. And also it's got a higher uptake, so really helps with muscle and bone development. Phosphorus, bone metabolism, energy metabolism. Phosphorus is really important in electrolytes and also kind of the DNA, the makeup of the body. Magnesium. Magnesium. Now, the first bullet point here, I think probably the first and second are why magnesium has kind of become a hot topic of the last few years. Everybody is wanting to feed magnesium because it's going to help calm their horse or settle their horse, or they think their horse is deficient in magnesium. Look, it's very rare for horses to be deficient in magnesium. Yes, magnesium plays a role in muscle contraction, nerve impulses, energy metabolism, skeletal system, but it's actually rare for a horse to be deficient in magnesium. Now, if you add large quantities of magnesium to the diet, it will have a sedation-like effect. But at that level of magnesium, you're also going to start interfering with the uptake of other minerals. So I am always cautious of feeding large quantities of magnesium. Vitamin E. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. What that means is the horse consumes it, eats it. It primarily comes from fresh green grass. It gets absorbed through the intestinal wall, and whatever is not immediately used gets stored in the fat. Right? Gets stored in the fat for later use. And why evolution has done this, or the kind of animal dynamics, is if you think about a wild horse, there's abundant pasture that's very green and high in vitamin E in the spring and the fall. But in the summer and the winter, not very available. The horse needs vitamin E year round though. So where's it going to get vitamin E in the summer and the winter? It's going to draw on its fat stores, right? So it's going to eat copious amounts of fresh green grass in the spring and the fall, and it's going to absorb it into its fat so that it can draw on those stores when pasture, fresh green pasture, is not available. So know that we need to make sure that, especially if our horses don't have access to pasture, that they're on a vitamin E supplement. It's a powerful antioxidant, immune function, muscle function, um, down to muscle development and top line and recovery and pain. There's so many benefits to adding vitamin E to the diet. There's a whole nother conversation that we can have around vitamin E, and we can talk about that at another date or at the end if people have more questions about vitamin E. But natural vitamin E is the most important. It's much more available than synthetic vitamin E. When you see natural vitamin E, so you'll see this. See, I've got the words alpha tocopherol there, vitamin E in parentheses, alpha tocopherol. On a label, if you look at a label and you see vitamin E's in it and you want to know, is it natural or synthetic? If there's a D in front of it, just a plain D, so it says D alpha tocopherol, that's natural vitamin E. If there's a D with an L, lazy old L, DL, means it's synthetic. Okay. And this is kind of the baseline amount of supplemental vitamin E that a horse needs. So when they're not doing a lot, and they've got plenty of green grass, they still need additional vitamin E, still about 500 to 1,000 IUs of vitamin E a day. If they're on stored forages, so hay, the problem with hay is even if it's the best quality hay, that vitamin E, within 2 weeks of it being cut, is all pretty much gone. Vitamin B. Now, vitamin B is water soluble, not fat soluble. So the difference is we're not storing it anywhere in our body. The bugs that live in the horse's hindgut, the microbes, they create B vitamins. So for every mouthful of fiber that that horse takes and the bugs break it down, they create B vitamins, and they're constantly being absorbed into the horse. Okay, so it's really important if you want to keep B vitamins up that you feed your horse plenty of forage. Absorbed in the small intestine. There's a whole slew of different B vitamins, but they're all water soluble. B1, thiamine, important for energy production. Horses that sweat heavily and have high workloads usually have a higher requirement for B1. Um, Helps also with palatability. So you'll see in some products that we want to increase palatability, we'll use B vitamins. There's also quite a high amount of B vitamins in your cereal grain. So if the horses are already eating like a cereal grain based diet, then they could be getting sufficient amount. My mouse is very touchy tonight. B2 or riboflavin, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, important for efficient feed utilization. Okay, so showing you all these things, it's not that, okay, we need to add riboflavin or B2 to the diet. It means it's just highly emphasizing why it's really important that horses get plenty of fiber in the diet, so that it keeps those naturally produced B vitamins high. Niacin, again, important for carbohydrate, protein, red blood cell formation, but the microbes in the gut create them. B5, pantothenic acid, fats, hormones, neurotransmitters, so brain function, blood blood oxygen carrying capacity, the ability to convert carbohydrates, protein, fat into energy. So it's not like you just eat carbohydrates and it randomly allows your muscles to exercise. You eat carbohydrates like starch. If it's you, it's your starchy protein, your starchy potatoes, or pasta or rice. These are high carbohydrate ingredients. But then there is kind of biochemical pathways at which B vitamin, B5 is important to help convert those into actual energy. So cereal grains aren't super high in this, but again, if we have enough fiber in the diet, those bugs are going to make it. Vitamin B6, pyridoxine. So again, I'm also showing you these words because sometimes in an ingredients list, if we're actually adding B vitamins to the diet, we're never going to write B6, B5. And oftentimes I get questions saying, what is this artificial ingredient, this pyridoxine or pantothenic acid or whatever? These are all natural B vitamins. They've just got funny names. So if you see pyridoxine, don't freak out and say, that's an artificial ingredient. I don't feed that to my horse. It's actually a B vitamin. A lot of these are important for nerve function. So B vitamins are known to have a calming effect on horses. They increase palatability, but also because they have a role in energy synthesis, kind of we feed them to heavy working performance horses as well. B12. This is a crazy one, cyanocobalamin, that activates folate, which is really important for brood mares. We've got red blood cell production, protein, carbohydrates, but again, synthesized exclusively, made exclusively by the bugs in the hindgut. Biotin, that is B7, biotin. So biotin is a B vitamin, just like every other B vitamin can be synthesized or made by the bugs that live in the hindgut. So, you know, trying to find a hoof supplement, if your horse has poor quality hooves and you're like, well, I got to feed him heaps of biotin, that's going to fix it. No, you don't have to feed heaps of biotin. You need to feed better quality sources of forage and supplements that might increase the digestibility of that forage, is that's going to unlock more natural biotin in your horse. If you're looking for a well-rounded hoof supplement, we want other ingredients like zinc and methionine to complement biotin. As I mentioned, biotin is implicated in poor hoof quality, but it's 100% synthesized by the bugs in the hindgut. Horses that are at risk of deficiency in B vitamins, those on a low roughage or a low hay diet. Horses that are under stress. So if they're under stress, the digestion and absorption of nutrients that are coming out of that fiber that they are getting is minimal. So stress, low grain diet, animals that have gone through any kind of colic, excess grain, toxic antibiotics, all diarrhea, all have kind of had an insult on that microbial population that live in the hindgut. And so they would be all benefit from either supplements that are going to boost the bugs, repopulate those bugs like your DDA or your Rescue Aid, or just straight up adding more fiber to the diet or adding B vitamins. Vitamin A, another powerful antioxidant, fat soluble like vitamin E. So it primarily comes from fresh green grass. It's going to be stored in the fat so that when the fresh green grass is not available, summer and winter, we can draw it out of the fat. Helpful for vision, reproduction, immune function. Again, because it's a powerful antioxidant, and these are the functions in the body that get attacked by that oxidative stress. In the Breeder's Choice Plus, the selenium and vitamin A have always been elevated. But just recently, we actually also added the marine-derived calcium because we know that's helping with that form of calcium is helping with bone development, but also chromium, because chromium was also a mineral that was helping us unlock more energy, really unlock and drive more energy into the cell. Vitamin D, another fat-soluble vitamin. Not common for horses to be deficient in vitamin D unless they're stuck in stalls. Maybe it's a horse that's on layup and is stuck in a stall, because vitamin D, if we get plenty of sunlight, we get conversion um, of ingredients into vitamin D. So if you're not getting enough sunlight because you're stuck inside, like in the wintertime is the only time that I actually take vitamin D, because I'm not outside and there's not a lot of sun. When I lived in Australia, I never took vitamin D because there's sun all the time. Since moving to America, I take vitamin D in the wintertime because you just have limited sun exposure. And so horses that may be stuck inside or they've got some bone issues, vitamin D is important. Vitamin K. Vitamin K is important for blood clotting, bone metabolism. It's fat soluble as well. Um, vitamin deficiency vitamin K deficiency is pretty rare in horses, but certainly if we feed plenty of good quality fiber, then they're able to absorb that vitamin K out of the fiber and put it into the fat to store it for times of deficiency. Potassium, it's an electrolyte. It's pretty high in the Total Performance and the Total Performance Plus. It's um, high in your legumes, some grass hay. So a legume like alfalfa is pretty high in potassium. Bermuda grass hay actually is moderate in potassium, pretty low in oats. It's responsible for nerve function, muscle function. It's a key electrolyte in any electrolyte supplement. I'm sure there's plenty of other minerals that we haven't talked about. I know we didn't talk about chromium, but I think we've touched on the majority that are important. So then when we look at labeling, because sometimes people say, well, it didn't see it in the guaranteed analysis, so it's not in the product. There are rules that we have to stick to when it comes to feeds or supplements. So the top kind of section there is equine feeds, all classes. So an equine feed that you might buy from a Purina or Nutrina or whatever your feed company is, by law, has to have crude protein, crude fat, crude fiber, max and min for calcium, minimum for phosphorus. It has to have a minimum for copper, selenium, zinc, and vitamin A. Okay, so they're the only things by law we have to put on a guaranteed analysis. Now, anything over and above that, it's by choice. So we think that I've got my catalog open and I'm looking at the Breeder's Choice Plus, for example. And we've also got vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E. We've got iodine on there because we think that we've got manganese. We think that these are also important nutrients in this specific type of product. You can see there's something that I don't have on here is biotin. No, because this is a vitamin and mineral supplement to help a brood mare. It's not a vitamin and mineral supplement to help with hoof quality. So the amount of biotin in this product, it doesn't mean because it's not in that guaranteed analysis that it's not in the product. That's where you have to go through the ingredients list and see all of the ingredients in there. But it's not the purpose. Typically, the things we put in the guaranteed analysis associate with the purpose of the product. Okay, so biotin, it's not the purpose of the product to be high in biotin to be a hoof supplement. So that's not on the label, on the guaranteed analysis. Doesn't mean it's not in there. Okay, for mineral supplements, what we are into, you can see you don't necessarily have to have, crude protein, crude fat, and crude fiber, because again, the purpose of a mineral supplement is not to provide crude protein, fat, and fiber. It's to provide minerals. So you can see we have to have a min and max for calcium, a minimum for phosphorus, and we have to have, depending on whether there's salt added. If there's salt added, you need to put that on there. But if not, you don't. And also copper, selenium, zinc, and vitamin A also needed to be added on there. So I think my my main point on that slide is just because it's not in the guaranteed analysis does not mean it's not in the product. Look in the ingredients list, because the ingredients list will also tell you the type, where kind of the source of those minerals, because the guaranteed analysis doesn't tell you whether they're chelated minerals or inorganic minerals. But again, if I'm looking at the Breeder's Choice Plus, I'm seeing here that we have manganese amino acid complex. So that is a chelated form of manganese, right? The guaranteed analysis just tells me how much manganese period is in the product, but it doesn't tell me the source of it. So I encourage you to get more well-versed with the actual ingredients. And if you've got any questions, like what is iron proteinate or cobalt amino acid complex, like what is that? Then certainly reach out to your territory manager, reach out to me so that I can help you. Now, I do have in little letters here, pricing subject to change. Again, these numbers I put on this slide 3 years ago, so I guarantee they've changed. But the point of this slide is to show you that we want to look per head per day. We want to look at it over a whole year. Obviously, if you're buying in bulk, you can get better pricing, but this is a graph here where this diet is balanced. Okay? So all of these bars are touching that red 100% line. So energy and protein and calcium and phosphorus and all the nutrients are being met. If you're feeding 20 pounds of grass hay, you're feeding 2 ounces of dark orange, you're feeding 6 pounds of oats to get some more calories because this horse is doing moderate exercise. Now, obviously, you could have chosen to maybe do alfalfa hay if you didn't want to add so much oats because that's going to give you more calories. But what we didn't show you in the very beginning slide was, when I showed you the cheap feed, was the cost of the hay. Well, if the hay stays the same, and in the first scenario, if we're feeding the same hay at the same amount, it's $4.40. We ended up having to feed about $2 worth of that cheap feed to balance that diet. In this example, 2 ounces of dark orange are balancing the diet for vitamins and minerals, and that's only 48 cents based on the price that I am using for it. So I think that it's really important, again, not to look at the price of the bag, look at the amount you're actually feeding. Look at it over a day, a week, a year. Look at the cost savings. Maybe you look at it and you think, oh, the cost savings between the two styles of feeding is like a coffee a day. Okay, well, you add that up over 365 days a year, and that is a lot of money. That could be a couple of $1,000s, and that's real money. So, um, the last one that I want to show, because I get this question a lot about Total Performance Plus and the Optimum Flex. So the Total Performance Plus is a vitamin and mineral supplement that it's really a convenience-based supplement, right? It's the regular basic Total Performance. That's a high performance vitamin and mineral supplement, but we also added a maintenance dose of the joint supplement Optimum Flex to it, just to make it convenient for customers so that they didn't have to have two products, scoop out of one, scoop out of another. But in order to get the maintenance dose of your Optimum Flex, you have to feed 3 ounces a day of Total Performance Plus. So, I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm just doing one scoop of Total Performance Plus a day, and they told me I'm getting my joint supplement out of it. No, it's 3 ounces a day of Total Performance Plus will give you the equivalent amount of a maintenance dose of Optimum Flex. So, sometimes I recommend if you're starting Total Performance Plus, you might want to buy a small Optimum Flex so that you can do the loading dose. And then once you're off the loading dose and you're just on the maintenance dose, you just kind of phase that Optimum Flex out because it's built into the Total Performance. So with that, I'll take any questions.